inspired from being in conversation in a community, a global community of people. And there are 6 of us as collaborators that bring forth conversation to you to listen in and see what piques your interest, what inspires you and brings forth questions. So we invite you to put your questions, put your inquiries, put your comments into the chat along with us and follow along as we look at how we shape our lives, how we recognize the principles of Tantra and Mat come through CreateAWorld conversations. The idea that we're always moving in and out of experiences in our lives, the feelings of contraction and expansion, the sense of going out of existence and coming into existence, something new, something letting go that no longer serves us, and always moving to the next greater whole in who we are and how we be. So let this conversation soak into your very selves and see what rises in you and join us. And by us, I mean, I'm welcoming my very dear friend and colleague of magic, of befriending the yin within. This is Danielle YoungSmith. There's so many things I could say about this gorgeous being. I believe, this is my opinion, that she is an old soul already here in a young body that has so much wisdom and so much inspiration to offer. And by dipping into the deep shadow side of who we are, we welcome and give a place to everything, every experience, every way that wisdom comes through us. And I was saying before we started our conversation with you that we were chatting a bit, and I was saying she's an organizational being. And she said, "What do you mean by that?" And I thought about it for a moment. Because she has such a diverse background as a computer programmer, as an astrobiologist, as a yoga teacher, and a practicer, practicing trauma focused coaching. There's like such a depth here in this beautiful young being. And that's why I wanted you to come in and have conversation with me, to see what rises and what's happening in your perspective. I love the multi-generationality of this conversation that could happen too. So welcome, Danielle, and thank you for saying yes to me. And just take a few moments to introduce how you see being here and being yourself with me.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Victoria. Another thing we were saying before we started the conversation with everyone here was, I can't believe it's already April and we're here. We're finally talking with each other because we've been planning this for a long time. And it just feels so good to be in space with you, as it always does. Wisdom sees wisdom in others, and I see so much wisdom in you, Miss Wise Woman's Way. And you're right, I am an old soul. I like to say I'm an old lady inside. Others really nicely say I'm an old soul. But yeah, I'm really excited to be here with you and to just have a conversation with an old friend. I know we've only actually technically known each other in these physical forms for about a year now, but I think we've known each other for a longer time than that. The question was, how do I see myself in this space, and just introducing myself here. Yeah, I've done a lot of threads in my life. I've had a lot of different threads, from astrobiology to software engineering to coaching and all beyond. And one big thing that I've learned on my journey is that I don't have to go to Mars to explore the universe, which I was trying to go to Mars for a portion of my life. because I realized that there's a universe within each of us that we can tap into if we just let ourselves be still for a moment and give ourselves the opportunity to connect with other beautiful souls, like really connect with them and not just kind of see them and then move on with our days. So I'm excited to just be here with you and talk more about the the existence under the existence that we all kind of see in the physical world, or we've been trained to see in the physical world.
I got so curious about the universe within us
Uh,
and how you find that in yourself and what that feels like for you.
mm. So okay, so I'm gonna answer that with a longer answer that dips into our theme today of befriending the yin within. Um, I discovered the universe within because I had to befriend the yin within. And for anyone who's out there watching and who's like, what is yin? I'm not sure. Um, if you've ever seen the yin yang symbol, it's a circular ancient Chinese symbol that has a kind of S shape in the middle. One side is black, one side is white. And on the black side, there's a white circle. And on the white side, there's a black circle, representing that in order to have a whole entity, we have to have the two polarities coming together, the dark and the light, the active and the still, the life and the death. But within each of those, there's a seed of the opposite as well. And it's all in fluid motion. It's never going to be static. Um, but yeah, so the yin side of things is the dark side. The yin side is the more feminine side. It's the part that oftentimes we kind of move away from because it's uncomfortable. And as biological beings, we're literally programmed to move away from discomfort because discomfort can mean being unsafe and being eaten out in the wild back in the day. Um, so yeah, I discovered my universe within because I like to say forced, but the universe saw that I was ready to start to befriend the yin within. And so it kind of pushed me to do so. I'll pause there. I saw a feeling in there.
My whole body went electric
Mm,
because um, I can have my version of what that was for me as a young girl,
mm,
and that I always knew, even in the external circumstance of my life, I always knew there was a universe within that was guiding me.
mm,
And that's what it resonated for me, was that there was some way in which your path was shaped, knowing that you were ready. And that's what I really resonated with. I knew I was ready in some way that I can't give words to, but yet I always understood, oh, this is how it's going to go. And I just go,
mm.
and
Yeah.
that feels like the yin that you're talking
Yeah.
about, the with it part.
Yeah, the surrendering into what's here rather than trying to fight and go towards what we think our lives should be. I always like to say, with respect to like planting seeds in our lives or having seeds planted within us from, something that someone says a long time ago or a show that we watch or whatever it is, it may take a really long time to come to bear fruit, if it ever comes to bear fruit. But when we are so set on our lives looking a particular way, we aren't able to see any of the fruit of the seeds that have been planted that are there ready for us because we're so focused on something else. And so I like to say that what the universe has in store for us is so much more magical than what we think that we have in store for us. And so that befriending the yin, the surrender, being in the flow, is part of being in the magic.
And I love that you use the word magic too. I've heard you use it over the past year. And that's a word that that makes me happy when I hear people using that word, that to have a magical life is the design.
Yeah.
And how do we create that magical way of living our lives? And I don't know what comes up for you when I say that back to you. How do you create it?
This is a really beautiful synchronicity too, because I was out at dinner a couple nights ago with my partner and a friend, and I, the topic of Disneyland came up and how Disney has created such a following and people who are obsessed with Disney. And we were trying to figure out, because none of us were kind of on that plane, and we were trying to figure out like what is it about Disney and like Disneyland that people get like really, really deep into and excited about, and it becomes part of their identity. And it's those moments of magic that they create, whether it's kind of out in the rest of the world, where, you know, when Disney pops up or at Disneyland specifically, it's those moments that people see as magic in that space and then don't recognize that they can experience that magic beyond the bounds of Disneyland. And so your question was, how do I have those moments of magic in my life? I mean, I I had a friend once who told me that when he walks down the street, he gets overwhelmed by all of the sensory input. And at that time, I wasn't kind of in that flow. Um, and so I kind of laughed it off because I was like, oh, that's kind of intense. And then over time, that was a seed that was planted for me. I started to understand what he meant. And what he meant was every single molecule in this universe is magic. We just have to see it. And there's gifts all around us and synchronicities all around us. We just have to see them. Let ourselves see the magic that's already there. And I see that there's a
Yeah.
question. Yeah.
I'll read it. I'll read it out. Tantra shares, because she just had a health procedure yesterday with her heart.
Mm,
Incredibly powerful to hear the yin is the darkness, because I could not figure out why I was feeling more and more vulnerable and tender in the heart challenge I've been in. What you shared
mm,
explains everything. I feel the deep yin of me.
mm.
That's the magic of being in conversation with each other too, is that we can find the ways in which our path resonates with others and brings
Mhm.
our own wisdom to the surface. From the yin, it gets expressed. And so that's kind of what I'm like hearing the juice of that. How about you?
Yeah, absolutely. Um, and it's like, okay, so from the yin, it gets expressed and it gets connected and it resonates with other people, and we can continue to grow and learn about ourselves because of that resonance that we feel and that pull. And I think why it feels so good when we finally do it is because we're so programmed not to do it. We're so programmed to move towards the good or the positive or the light side. But I'm a firm believer that when we do that, we're only living half of life, if even half of life, because we're forgetting about the other spectrum of our existence.
And I don't know about you, but when I dip into the yin inkwell,
Yeah.
I have more access to the potency, the viability of what can
Mm.
emerge and be expressed. Um,
Mm.
it's like I'm very connected to the primordial earth nature being of me, and I move from a body sentience. People who've been around me know this about me, that's how I naturally orient. And so I think because of that, I'm more willing to be in the yin aspect and let
Yeah.
the yang expression
Yeah.
of that come through.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking about, we were just together in Sedona for some training experience, and we went for a hike to the womb of Sedona, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just recalling that moment of sitting there. You had climbed up into the cave of the womb,
Yeah.
and another fabulous woman with us was holding the anchor point of one side, and I was on the other side. And
Yeah.
the primordial mother just came through and expressed her energy of having us be there with her through sound. And
Mhm.
what was so lovely and remarkable is hearing the different ways in which the three of us were in the experience and the resonance of that. And then, in addition, someone we didn't know who was there turned around and looked at me afterwards and said, "Thank you."
Yeah.
Right. And I'm thinking, thank you, Mother. Thank you,
Mm.
Mother, for bringing that yin up through me and expressing the yang, the balance and the wholeness of it in this moment,
Mhm.
to take the experience that we were in, amplify it. And that for me is a magic moment.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. How did that feel to you? So what was the body sensation of that magic in that moment?
I'm feeling it now in remembrance. Um, it was it was like electrifying, like my whole nervous system got a supercharge,
Mm.
uh, and my battery pack got restored in a way, and then all of my muscles just kind of shook it off, like after
Mm.
you've been stressed or an animal
Yeah,
is in a
yeah.
heightened state, and then they just kind of do the boom, and it's released, and you've let go of whatever tension, holding, emotional, mental tensions, they all just kind of like go. And for me, when sound does come through, it is an expression of integration, release of whatever my system um, had been sorting, and then it was
Mhm.
okay. We will integrate this, and
Yeah.
then I'll see what the insight is later. And so I'm seeing an insight into it now in this moment.
Yeah. I
What is that? What is that? How does that land for you?
Beautifully. It lands so beautifully because what we're all doing is channeling the energies in the universe, and it needs to come, it needs to move. But when we block off some of those energies by saying like, oh, this probably shouldn't be something that I say or do in public or in society or whatever, it gets stuck and then it can't move, but it needs to move. And so you in that moment were a huge conduit for a bunch of energy that wanted to be manifested. We're the flute that needs the wind in it or the breath in it to actually be able to play music. And so that breath is coming through you, and the breath needs the flute for music to happen. And so we need each other to move through to create that music of life, but we oftentimes stop it from happening because we think we're not supposed to be a particular way.
And you know what you spark in me from that is that I I think this might be a pattern for me that I often don't
Mm.
recognize. I might be in the experience of my own sentient intelligence of something, but you said, and how it relates to everyone else, and how what came through me has an impact.
Mhm.
on everyone else that's in the experience, in their experience, but then we're also having a community experience. And so you brought that lens to my attention too, to expand beyond what I was thinking about. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yes. Beautiful. And in those moments, you're giving voice to other people's energy also. The number of times where I've been practicing Reiki and I'm called to say something that isn't mine, but it's just in the field, and I say it out loud, immediately the person that's receiving Reiki like starts to sob because that's what they needed to hear, what they needed to feel. And but they couldn't say it for themselves, or they couldn't maybe believe it for themselves. So you allowing that energy to move through you is the energy that needs to move for yourself, for the community, for other people who haven't been able to express it themselves or don't know how to connect. Yeah, it's all part of the magic.
And and I'm going to bring it back, the thread back to the title, Befriending the
Hmm.
Yin Within,
Yeah.
how this feels like a moment of that.
Mm.
And how do you relate the yin to this shared conversation now that's rising?
Mm.
Is up for you?
Mm. How do I relate the yin to this shared conversation? There are so many aspects of the yin that exist, whether it's the darkness or whether it's the feminine energy of, depending on which school of thought you're from, can be the active energy or it can be the passive energy. And for me right now, the yin feels like the receiving energy of receiving whatever is in the field between the two of us and around the two of us. We're miles and miles away from each other. So there's maybe a lot of you in between us as we're having this conversation, and just receiving whatever's here that needs to be said or shared.
Wow.
Mhm.
And how we can be in the shared field with one another,
Yeah.
even though we're states away or
Yes.
countries away, oceans away. That it reminds me that we're really not away. We're never
No.
really away. We just have this thought that we're
Mhm.
separate.
Yeah.
And and there's something that I can feel it in my system that wants to say more, but I don't know what to say yet. So if there's something coming up for you, go for it, because I'm still kind of exploring for a
Um,
moment, pausing in it.
yeah. Not everything that we need to say is verbal. So I don't know, maybe there's some sounds that need to come out that are expressing, or some movements. I don't know, right?
Yeah, it is kind of like, oh gosh, what is this that's coming? Like, you know how we use our hands when we talk a lot, and
Yeah.
I see this kind of, it wants to come up kind of movement, and I was very aware I was doing that. Like,
Yeah.
what wants to be shared in the field? But here's what pops into my mind is I'm thinking, if somebody's eavesdropping on us, maybe they're the ones that have the words or the sounds or something that want to be placed in between us in the conversation. And
Yeah.
how that is changing my way of being in conversation with whomever is with us. Even if it's
Mhm.
somebody listening later, there may be
Yeah.
something that they say that informs, because
Yeah.
time is one of those things. Yeah, past, present, future, it's all now, right? So
Exactly.
it's like this creative force that moves us is like really in charge of this right now. There's a co-creating happening, and
Yeah.
we may not always see it in the moment, right?
Mhm. It's another one of those seeds that's planted in the energy field, in the universe, wherever, and it's going to sprout, or maybe it's already sprouted. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe it's
Yeah.
already fully grown and we're just getting connected to it. Like maybe you've already
Mm.
been to Mars and you don't know
Yeah.
that you've been there.
Yeah, totally.
Oh,
Totally.
wow.
Oh, I love that. Yeah, we can finally see it or feel it, but it's been there the whole time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I guess something that's coming up for me is just I kind of going back to earlier in our conversation where you were saying I always felt connected to a bigger energy and knew that that was what was moving me or what was guiding me. And I followed it. I was able to follow it. And I love that because my experience has been similar, but I think on the other side of the coin, on the other side of the yin yang, um, where I grew up in a in a family with a parent who grew up in a super, super religious household, super religious farm. Um, and it was a it was a tough place, a really tough upbringing. And so when he got out of there, he was like, nope, no religion, nothing at all. And I grew up also feeling like religion was not a thing for me. Organized religion was not what I wanted to be a part of. It caused a lot of drama, a lot of pain, in my ancestral lineage. And so the callings that I had or the feelings of being connected to something bigger, I was always like, nope. Like not gonna touch that because that to me feels like it's organized religion. And then as I got older and older, I started to say it because I couldn't ignore it anymore. And I started to say, like, I feel like there's something bigger. I feel like there's something more out there. And everyone would say, well, that sounds a lot like religion, Danielle. But I knew there was something deeper. There was the universe energy. And it wasn't until I took this amazing class in college, which I should have shared this with my professor from this class. It was called Technology, Religion, and Future. And yeah, amazing class. And I was scared to take it because it had the religion, the religion word in there, which to me felt it was a really tough word. And I had focused my entire life and existence up until then on like the physical world and on science, on astrobiology, which I was studying and creating the major for. And then I took that class, and the professor had us write an essay, I think, for the last part of class. And of course, I wrote about space because I was really deep into um, space exploration. I wanted to go to I literally wanted to go to Mars. I had done a simulated Mars mission. I worked at NASA. I worked in space policy in DC. And so I wrote about going to space and what that meant to me. And he looked at me after reading it and said, Danielle, I think space and the stars are your religion. And in that moment, I was like, oh, it doesn't have to look like it looked for my dad and his family. Like, and there's a deeper sense of it of like sacredness that religion has sprung from, or organized religion has sprung from. And that sacredness, that yinness is what we're connecting with. And I didn't let myself connect with that until college because I had a preconceived notion of what it was. And so I was really deep into the yang aspect of my existence that once I discovered the yin, it was like, ooh, I'm a kid in a candy shop. I get to explore myself and what's there and the wholeness of self because I had been pushing away half of it for my whole life.
Yeah.
Mm.
We've got another great comment in the feed.
Yeah. Hmm.
Jess and I are stunned listening to this conversation. This is what we've been living since the magician of self started in so many of us.
Hmm.
And then people holding the field for my surgery and the amazing experience nonverbal was. So I'll put some background information into this. There are a group of us in that are part of a global community that some of us co-created the CreateAWorld podcast from. And we've been in a deep listening um, as how we are magicians of in our own selves in relationship to universe creation, and this deep aspect of how we do that within community, holding each other in experience. Like it's that all of these threads that we're talking about are kind of the thread of what the magician of self exploration, deep inquiry is. It's a very yin experience that there's a group of us that are in community together, yet doing our own individual yin inquiry. Um,
Hmm.
so um, I'm kind of curious, like how does that how does that weave for you in the way you are in communities that you're a part of?
Mm. It's changed over the years, and as I've started to know what that yin is and what that wholeness is for myself, um, I think I've been really lucky in my life to, regardless of the community, invite in or have reflected back to me other people who, regardless of what they're doing in their physical lives, are driven, are deep, and are daring souls. And that's what I connect with at the heart level, at the soul level. And you don't find that in in the person that everybody puts out into the world. And me having spent a lot of my life in kind of these more young fields, the male-dominated fields from science to software engineering in Silicon Valley, I think it's less of the norm to have people who are exploring both aspects and who are even open to a conversation like this because it feels, I don't know, I mean, the term woo-woo gets thrown around so often. Um, and there's different levels of woo-woo, right? For example,
Definitely.
um, yeah, when I first started working in software as an engineer, I had just experienced and started to learn the power of meditation and just taking a deep breath when things feel scary. And so, or when they feel just like a little bit off kilter. And I remember one time going into a meeting of, I think, all male software engineers at that time. I think my manager was female or my mentor was female. And in that room, I had been in multiple meetings with them before, and it got a little dicey in there. Like people were stressed out, they were on edge. And so at the beginning of this one meeting, I walked in and I was like, hey, I have a suggestion for how we start our meetings. I think it would be really helpful for us to just take like 3 deep breaths together at the beginning of a meeting. And they laughed. They were all like, what are you talking about? And me now can feel very like grounded in that and see that they just haven't had that experience. But me then, like, ooh, contracted and was like, okay, well, I can't be seen in this environment for the person that I am, and so I need to put on this other face. And I'm getting away. I don't remember what your question is.
It's, well, what I'm threading in, so I don't know that there's really a question to be answered. But what I'm threading in is you planted a seed in that moment.
Mm, mm,
And just like we said, it could be fully manifested and we don't know it, we can't see it, or it could be that it needs watered and
yeah.
there wasn't any water available in that
Mhm.
moment.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and I think that's so true in our culture to recognize, to be observing of, it's okay to keep saying it in those places, because maybe one of these days, one person will put a drop of water on it
Yeah.
instead of the, well, I guess I can't do that there. It's
Mm,
like you said, the daring souls that are
yeah.
in your life dare to plant a seed in a place where you can't imagine it growing. And it makes me
Mhm.
think of the image that I see graphically periodically, the flower, the dandelion
Mhm.
that grows out of the concrete. And
Yeah.
that image is important to me because it reminds me that in the concrete, in the blocks, the challenges, there's
Mm,
always in the heart of
yeah.
it is a seed that wants to grow, wants to flourish. And I'm thinking
Yeah.
about what Tantra was speaking to at the beginning of how she got a connection to herself and from the community, that we all were in a shared heart field with her going through this um, perceived challenge, but also knowing in conversation that we've had that there's also a perceived wholeness that's
Mhm.
always there. And
Mhm.
I'm really kind of curious, maybe I'm taking it into another thread. I'm kind of curious how the perceived challenge and the perceived wholeness can find that way of being together, and how
Mhm.
that shows up for you. It, like, I know you're I know you're very good at transmuting, transformational um, work with grief, work with challenge. And I
Mhm.
wonder how that speaks to you and how you serve the people that you serve.
Mhm. It really speaks to me, number one. Um, so where to dive into this? There's so many juicy places. Um, so I think one of the things that causes us to be in the place of perceiving challenge as a roadblock, and as, sometimes when we have a challenge, we get into this human story of this is unfair. Why me? What, like, why am I supposed to go through this? Why do I have to go through this? And I think underlying that is a couple of things. One of those we talked about before, where we feel separate from the rest of the world, or we feel separate from other people. There's a perceived unwholeness from other people around us. And then another layer of that is not necessarily remembering that we are already whole as individuals as well. And so this challenge that comes up here is the challenge of the challenge is to recognize it as an invitation to uplevel ourselves and our souls and our evolution as beings. Because there's always a way to uplevel through challenge. There's always an invitation to uplevel in our challenges. And that's really the work that I do with my clients, is to provide the tools and the perspective shift to be able to figure out how to up level in challenges. And of course, the container for holding space for the really human aspects of challenge, the emotion that comes up in the challenge, the pain, the fear, the worry, everything that's there is important because it's the yin stuff that we got to dig into in order to remember the wholeness that we have already. I
Yeah.
see some comments in the chat.
Oh, I want you to read Tantra's comment. I want you to give it sound.
All right. So there's a comment in the chat from Tantra that says, and being held in community that holds your wholeness when you can't, ooh, yeah, is one of the most powerful experience I have ever had and is the goddess community way in ancient worlds that I remember. Ooh, yeah. I love that. Can I read that again?
Yes, please. I'm still absorbing.
So good. And being held in a community that holds your wholeness when you can't is one of the most powerful experiences I have ever had and is the goddess community way in ancient worlds that I remember. Mhm.
And that's what it means to be with another,
Mhm.
to let the yin express and befriending the yin within.
Mhm.
And each one of us in the community that was that container in our own magical way of being in community with Tantra,
Yeah.
it was an invitation to our own beings. For me, it was an invitation for me to step in deeper into myself on behalf of someone else and on behalf of me, knowing me more fully and completely too. So that's what community is for me.
Yeah. Oh,
Thank you, Tantra.
and
That's beautiful.
yeah, thank you so much. And I love that we're getting into this aspect of community too, because it's a place that I've struggled with for a while now, and I'm starting to remember how important it is because I've been a lone wolf or a very independent woman for a long time. And kind of just like knowing that I can do it, knowing that I can do what I need to on my own, but starting to feel over the past few years, number one, how lonely it gets doing that and trying to hold everything for yourself and for everyone else who feels like they may be relying on you. Um, but yeah, also for these moments, Tantra, that you're saying, being held in community who holds your wholeness when you can't. And it's okay when we can't. And having that community is so essential.
And the potency that we all receive, the gift of holding, being held when another can't.
Mhm.
That it's so profound to me in this moment that we're giving voice to. It's that it is by design that we will all have moments where we can't hold our own wholeness.
Yeah.
And I think of all those gentlemen that you walked in and said, how about if we take 3 deep breaths together? That you were holding the wholeness of them, even though they couldn't hold and perceive themselves in wholeness. You were at least inviting that possibility. And so it's like when I go out into the world, I'm asking of myself, can I be a container that holds the wholeness and sees the wholeness in others, even if they can't see it in themselves? And what I've been exploring this year is that container that I have learned to create those containers for others that can't. Is my new word for it is I create territories. And that's part of my learnings and my inquiry is to rename it into I create a territory to be with another that cannot see their wholeness until they can.
Ooh, yes.
Because we all have it. It's until we can see it, until we can remember and be the wholeness of who we are.
Yeah. Oh.
And I think you do that too.
Yeah. I don't say it that way. And I would like to start. Can I steal some parts of that? Because it's a really, really beautiful way to say it.
I
Holding your
stole it
wholeness.
from Tantra.
Yeah. And
Made it my own. I
as
made it my own version of it. That's what we'll say. So make it your own.
absolutely. And as you were talking, I got this really amazing download that I'm gonna try to put words to. I don't know if I'm gonna try. So close my eyes because I need gotta come back to it because it's so juicy. Um, the idea of being in community and having at least one person to be able to see you and hold you in your wholeness when you can't. And initially, I was kind of feeling that space of not being able to feel or hold my own wholeness as a deficit or as a lack. But the download that I received was those are the times where we are the most connected to who we really are. We're most connected to source, and we're channeling everything that's there and letting it all out. And that's when we're most connected to our to our wholeness, yes, but to also the huge range of emotion and experience that humans can have, whether it's in our lifetime or our ancestral lifetime or the people around us. And it's really a gift to have those moments where we can't hold our wholeness, because I think that's when we're really up leveling and increasing our capacity to connect with who we really are. And there's another piece that came through that I'm grasping for right now. Hold on. Um, hmm. Okay, I'm gonna pause there and open my eyes again and see where we are in our
Yeah.
conversation.
Yeah. I feel like this, I feel connected to this universal, multi dimensional, energetic landscape that sound is just reverberating and pulsing through what you're saying. And that's the shape of the language for me is this feeling of the whole universe is like right here with us.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and and it's like I don't have words, but I have this sense that there is a beingness that is celebrating, like champagne corks are popping, saying yes to what you're saying. And my whole body is in that register of not only are people eavesdropping, the universe is eavesdropping with us. Maybe there's some beast on Mars that is like,
Yes. They got it.
they are on this. We are going to reverberate and let it kind of like let the accordion energy of it just keep pulsing beyond this conversation. Because I looked at the clock and I went, oh my gosh, the hour's almost complete.
I know. And I'm feeling that second piece of it coming back now too, which is amazing. So in the last couple minutes we gotta get it into the world. Um, the feeling like we're not whole or feeling like we can't hold this wholeness or see it yet, that's just our I'm phrasing it as a protection mechanism, but I don't think it really is. I think it goes back to earlier in our conversation about the universe knew that I was ready to go into the darkness, to go into the yin. And our our inability to see or hold our own wholeness is that like titration of like, okay, are they ready yet? Can they really, as this physical meat sack that we are, like, are they ready to hold everything that they are? And it's okay if it's not yet, but it will be at some point because our little human bodies and our little human brains aren't always ready for the ins for all that the universe is yet, but we're working on it. And
And
yeah.
I really love the use of the word titration, that
Mhm.
that the universe titrates the exact amount, knows the exact amount that is
Yeah.
needed for us to up level a little bit, a lot,
Yeah.
and
Uh-huh.
we don't have to understand it, that we can
Mhm.
be with it as it
Mhm.
comes,
Yeah.
and the comprehension, the cognitive articulation will come as we titrate our
Yeah.
physical, mental, emotional beings and up level to be able to receive what the universe has for us. That's phenomenal. I'm like so I'm I'm so filled with gratitude that we can hold the pause for the second
Mm.
piece to come through, because that just that just like opened up a whole nother layer. And
Yeah.
I see there's more conversation in the chat. You want to read it?
Mhm. Yeah, I want to just pop one last thing in here before
Okay.
I read the chat. Um, our ability to hold other people's wholeness is also part of that titration. It's like we're expanding as we do that for other people and then for ourselves too. Yeah. Okay, chat.
And there's nothing else needed. Nothing else is needed. The rest will take care of itself, right? If we just
Yeah.
focus on this and this alone, a well-lived life.
Mhm. Yes. Yes. All right, I'm gonna read it. So from the chat, we have it is a sign of leaving the patriarchal realm. I am the leader of the community, and many leaders fail because the community isn't held or hold themselves to be equal. Yeah. Yes. And then the next piece of this, or another, yeah, I
Thread.
think the next piece of this, Jesus was empowered by women, and yet he said to his disciples, "Can you not stay awake for me?" Mm.
There's a little dose of religion,
Mm.
different
Mm.
version of what we might perceive religion to be, like a reconfigured version of the
Yeah.
aliveness of what
Yeah.
the story was.
Yeah. Yeah. And I believe that Jesus was a woke dude. I, I believe that.
I
And I
love it.
believe that he was sharing these downloads from the universe,
Yeah.
and the universe was popping champagne at that time too.
And the women
Yeah.
and the women who held the container for him to be a woke dude. Yeah. And
Yeah.
and that's and that's that yin container that we
Yeah.
all have access to, men and women. So I know men who have beautiful yin containers, and
Absolutely.
that's why I'm still thinking about those men in the meeting. They have beautiful yin containers. They just haven't accessed them at that moment. And
Yeah.
so I think that's I think that's so important for those of us who are on the journey of befriending the yin within, is
Mm.
to keep planting those seeds, even
Yeah.
when others out there may not see or have access to their wholeness. If we see and give them that little titration that we're working on behalf of the design of the universe.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that phrase that you had back when we were talking about planting seeds, where you said the people who dare to plant a seed where there's no hope of it growing currently. And that's all we have to do. Just leave the seed there. We don't have to water it. We don't have to give it anything else, but just have it there. Mm, more in the
Yeah.
chat.
Tantra just said something to you. So while you're reading that, you can see what that feels like for you. I'm
Okay.
aware that we're coming to the close. We have about 5 more minutes. And
Yeah.
I just wonder, like, pulling all these threads together, this is not a completed conversation for me. Like
Mm,
this is the opening up, the planting a seed of this conversation for all of us, whomever listens to see where you take the seed of this and plant your own seeds. That's what it feels like for me. I certainly am thinking about how I will be planting seeds. And
yeah.
I very much want people to know that they can connect to you directly.
Mhm.
If they
Yeah.
want more of your seed, wisdom,
Yeah.
your capacity to guide. And I do want people to know at the end of the Create a World conversation will be your connection information. But if there's some way in which you want to direct people to you and say something, I want to give you space to
Mm.
create that.
Thank you. Um, the most direct way to connect with me is to just book some time with me, free 30 minutes to just chat from my website. You can book directly from there. It's innereye.org/book. It's a little funny if you look at my name on here. Yeah, what's up?
Write it in the chat.
Yeah, I can write in the chat.
That
Um,
that way, if people save the chat, they'll have it right there too.
book. Yeah. There's a calendar link directly on there. And if you are in a time zone where those times don't work for you, no problem. You can email me. Um, I believe on that booking page, there's also a way to connect. No, email is better than just hopping on the newsletter. So if you want to email me, I'll give you the support email. But secretly it still goes to my own email. And I popped that in the chat too. It's support@innereye.org.
Oh my goodness. Any just any closing, bubbling up or settling in,
Hmm.
you just want to like close the conversation for now.
It's funny. I just have this like incredible cleanness that I feel in my heart and in my chest. Just like it's not open and expansive, it's just clean and clear. Um, and I just want to hold that for all of us, you know, just there.
Yeah. And I hope is not the right word, but I've been kind of playing with this notion of how we live our lives as juicy, saucy women when we're in our 20s, our 40s, and our 60s. And that's kind of my
Mm,
next little program that I want to develop
yeah.
is how do we support each other? And I feel the potency of today planting a seed for me in
Mhm.
developing that because I love being intergenerational in conversation with people because we plant different seeds for each other at different times in our lives. And I'm going to say it's the 20, 40, 60, 80, because I know some
Yeah.
people, wisdom
Yeah.
women in those ranges too. So I'm going to expand that beyond myself. And I'm just so delighted that we had time together that we could share with others and let them eavesdrop with us, and the contribution of Tantra and others in the field. It's so appreciated. So thank you. Have a beautiful rest of your day, evening, sleep time, whatever you're moving into, and befriend your yin within. Thank you so much, Danielle.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to save this chat real quick because it's beautiful. Thank
Me
you.
too.
So great to be here.